Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the Anchorage, Alaska College and Career Fair panel session. We are here with an amazing panelist to tell you a little bit more about preparing for college, which is super exciting. I'm really excited to learn a few things as well myself. But before we get started, just a few housekeeping items just to make sure that we all have an efficient and fun college fair and panel. My name is Sibel. I will be your facilitator for this evening's session. And a couple other housekeeping reminders here. Your camera and microphone are turned off. So this is a webinar style formatted type of panel presentation. The panelists cannot see or hear you. So you're probably wondering, well, Sibel, how do I ask these questions that I have? And that is in and of itself a great question. So you're going to be using your Q&A button in your Zoom toolbar. So if you look at your Zoom toolbar, normally right smack dab in the middle, there is a Q&A button in which you will press and then go ahead and type in your questions to the panelists at any point in time. Please do not wait until the last minute, as this is about a 40 to 45 minute panel presentation. So feel free to ask those questions at any time. Also, this is one out of many college presentations offered, so feel free to check out the schedule on the website to sign up for any more sessions. And also remember, recording is available. All sessions are being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/Alaska. Without further ado, I'd love to get started, so I will let Fernando Chavez. Mr. Chavez, if you'd like to come on back, I'll let him take the floor. Thank you all so much.
All right. Hello, y'all. My name is Fernando. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Recruitment at UAA. So I'll be presenting a little bit about preparing for college. So this isn't going to be a presentation that's going to be, specific to only UAA. This really is more geared towards preparing for college as a whole. So whether you're interested in UAA or in other institutions, this panel presentation, which is just me, could be pretty helpful in getting you a little bit more information and get you started and onto the right path. Now, because I can't always see whenever I present questions, I will take a little break whenever we get to each section to look over the questions. So feel free to put yours in there. I'll check them out as soon as we get the next break. Then we also have some Q&A time at the end, so you have a little bit of time to answer anything that you, or ask anything that you might want to know a little bit more about. So without further ado, here are the overarching topics that we'll be covering. So firstly, preparing for college, looking forward. So really, if you are even as early as a freshman in high school, these are good topics to really start getting into your mind. But I understand many of you may be juniors and seniors, so a lot of these are a little bit more top of mind right now, especially for the seniors who are either starting or have already started their applications, or have maybe even submitted their first application already. But we'll be going through also degree and college types, finding the right college fit, and kind of beginning your college search, admissions requirements, because they are very different depending on which college, and finally, a super important thing, cost and affordability. So first things first, it's really important to make sure to get engaged. Many of you at your high school, you may have a college or career counselor, or even just maybe even a trusted teacher that you'd like to talk to kind of discuss your career interests, see kind of what you'd like to do long term in terms of your career. But to really get started on this search, you need to kind of research the academic requirements for these careers. So does it require a certificate? Those tend to be only a semester to maybe 2 semesters to complete. An associate's degree, which typically is a 2-year degree, bachelor's, which is about 4, or apprenticeships, which are a little bit more hands-on work. You're learning under someone else, you're an apprentice to someone else. There's a lot of different paths forward for many different career paths. Then also just be sure, whether you're volunteering or if you have a job, check those out, see if they're related to your career interests. Hopefully you can get a little bit of a feeling for if you like those. So I know many individuals who go on to eventually be admissions counselors like myself might do like some work in an admissions counseling office, like just interning or volunteering, things like that. But also you could also create a portfolio highlighting skills or your talents. That's super helpful when you're starting to fill out those applications for admissions. Then it's really important to kind of really explore your options. So, visiting college of interests. Now, many of you may be like me, located in Alaska, so it's not always super easy to visit a lot of places in person. But one of the, if we can call it, good things that may have came out of the COVID pandemic is that a lot of places, nearly all of them now have virtual tours or virtual visits that you can go on, to really get to see a lot more than you might otherwise get to see without paying, the flight costs and hotel costs and everything else that you might do. But I also highly recommend checking out to see if the school has a fly-in program. Many schools do. And those fly-in programs can help either reimburse you or straight up just pay for your visit. So they'll pay flight costs, hotels, or you may even stay in the residence hall or dorm with a student host. So you have a lot of opportunities there. Make sure you're preparing for questions about, on those campus visits. Don't just show up and not really have anything to ask, whether it be, asking a student's tour guide or something about, their experience, what they're up to on the weekends, things like that. It can really help determining what you're going to be doing long term. Talking to current students and make sure to have some kind of comparison list for your schools. It's really important. And many college search engines nowadays allow you to compare side by side and take notes on, okay, college A has, this, and this, college B has this, that, and that, how they kind of compare to each other in my own interests. But then also really important research, those admission deadlines and requirements. They are very different depending on which college, and some might not even have very specific ones. They might be rolling admissions, which we go over a little bit later, where it can be just about any time throughout the year that you can submit your application. So we'll start off with degree and college types. Let me just make sure there's no questions so far. Remember, you can use the Q&A function, though I guess we haven't really gotten into the heart of much of the presentation quite yet. So starting with an associate's degree. So I'll go over associates and bachelors. So associates, again, those are those 2-year degrees. May take a little bit longer depending on the major, but typically about 2 years. Typically preparing you directly for a specific job in a specific career. Some or all may transfer directly to a completion of a bachelor's degree. So it can, for many students, be kind of a stepping stone. So don't feel you have to go for a 4-year degree right away. If you feel you'd like to start a 2-year degree, it is certainly a good way to start off, and you're still able to get a fantastic job outside of after graduation with an associate's. Bachelors, these are either BAs, so Bachelor of Arts, or BS, Bachelor of Science. The difference I like to say between the two, Bachelor of Arts tends to be a little bit more in the humanities, so a lot more of application with, like, say, public speaking or psychology, those types of classes, while BS will typically be a bit more science heavy. So you're going to be taking a few more like science, like chemistry, all those sorts of fun things that are a little bit more difficult for sure, but can get you very well prepared for things, especially when you're going on to things like medical school. Again, 4 years, but may take a little bit longer depending on the major or credit hours. I know some institutions, including UAA, even had some abridged programs where you can say, for example, do like a 3+3 with our law degree, where you can do 3 years with us and 3 years with one of our partner institutions to get a law degree. So you have a few different options when it comes to that. Then the different types of colleges. So there's 2 major types that'll go. I won't go into the nitty gritty of every single type of college, but there's private colleges and public colleges. Those are the 2 big ones that you really want to talk about. So private colleges tend to be, governed by non-governmental entity, so non-organized, organization. Funding relies a lot on either tuition, private donations, or many of them have large endowments, so money that they've saved up over the years that they help fund their whatever they're running. Tend to be a bit smaller in public colleges. It doesn't always hold true. There are some fairly large private institutions, but most tend to be a little bit on the smaller side. And typically they do offer a limited number of degree programs. So they might specialize in one area. So say like the liberal arts, or they might be very into, science, or say, like, I know there's some that are very into computer science nowadays. So those STEM fields. So it's a little bit more specialized, I would say. And then public colleges, typically publicly funded, have a wide variety of degree programs and academic areas of studies, tend to be a little bit larger. and may even be a part of a larger university system. One thing I will mention as well when we're talking about private colleges, typically the sticker price might be a little bit higher. I'll go into cost affordability a little bit later, but essentially the price that if you were to receive absolutely no scholarships tends to be higher at private colleges, but many scholarships do exist for private colleges. So you'll hear this over and over again. Don't be scared away the sticker price. Very few people pay that, typically quite large amount. Next, on to college search. So we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth, specifically about getting started on your college search and a few of the resources that you have to really help you along your path. I'll just check the questions really quick. Nothing so far. All right, so first off, now kind of discovering what's out there. Since many of you are from Alaska, I might push you a little bit towards some resources that are very specific to Alaskans, like the Alaska Career Information System. If you're looking for this, you just have to Google it. It'll pop right up, and it's a great way for you to get a lot of really in-depth information about different careers and different possibilities, both here in Alaska and even abroad, at different institutions in the lower 48. I always recommend college search engines. So we have things like College Board, Princeton Review, as well as things that are popping up like Niche, which are really great ways to learn a little bit more about different colleges. Typically, they have some kind of ranking on them as well. I know Niche, for example, which is one of those somewhat newer ones, ranks things like the student life. So like how exciting are things around campus, or how good or nice are the residence halls or dorms. Those are really interesting things to learn a little bit more about. I will mention, before signing up for one of these, I highly recommend making a special email just for college search stuff, because they will spam your inbox so much, because the ways that many of these institutions offer their free services to the student is that they sell your information, your email, so that colleges can reach out to you. And so definitely make one just for that. Otherwise, your personal inbox is going to be just filled with so many emails from colleges. And again, they also have great search engines, great search functions to search for specific programs. So if you're interested in, say, like engineering, you can narrow it down to, good engineering colleges and only look at those and compare those against each other, as opposed to just trying to, look over the, over 2,000 institutions here in the US. So really make sure that you're looking, do the schools that you're looking for consider or considering have the programs that you want. Or if you're not quite sure what you're interested in studying, do they have either something that's either undeclared, exploratory, I've heard, or just different ways of saying, you're not quite sure on deciding on your major. You don't have to decide on your major right away. Many students change their major throughout their time in college. And so that's why so many students nowadays actually just start undeclared or start exploratory and then work with an advisor at their institution to choose what their major will be for the rest of their time there. Next, a little bit more about finding the right fit. So finding the right fit is something that you'll often hear from college admissions counselors, but also from high school, career and guidance counselors, because you really want to make sure that where you're going is a place that matches the expectations that you have for college. So I list out here a few different ones that really come to mind. Do they have mandatory on-campus living for freshmen? Are you going to have to live on campus, especially if you're looking close to home? Just to give one example, I know at UAA, we don't require you to live on campus your first year. So many of our students choose to live off campus, but I know that's not something that every student likes. Many students like to have more of that, vibrant on campus living experience. So they might go to, a larger school, like say down in California, like UCLA, USC, that have the large campus complexes, where many of the first years, second years live. Climate, super important. If you're looking to get, we have their stay here in Alaska, we do get, lots of snow. There's lots of snow outside right now. Or, if you'd like to move to a warmer weather locations, you certainly could do that. Many students I know look at places like Hawaii, California, Washington, Oregon, where many Alaska students also go off to. And then also in things like undergraduate research. So some institutions somewhat limit the amount of undergraduate research because they have grad students who may be doing most of the research, while some, especially much smaller, private institutions, really have great undergraduate research that you can get involved in. So if that's the interest area for you, definitely, look at those really small, especially a lot of the private institutions tend to have really great opportunities for undergraduate research. And finally, honors programs. Many of you may have participated in things, in high school to really help you stand out, maybe taking, AP classes, IB, Cambridge, whatever your specific course of study was. And you want to continue kind of, going above and beyond a little bit in college. So if so, make sure that your college has an honors program because it's a great way to really distinguish yourself and kind of challenge yourself a little bit more. And then also make sure you know what are your goals after you complete your undergraduate degree. You may not know right away, but it's really good to within your about first or at worst second year, really having a good plan for what your job is going to be or your career is going to be long term. And then also how far away from home do you want to be? For many students here in Alaska, I mean, we know how far away certain things are. Even going up to Fairbanks is pretty far for us. We're down to Juneau, but still, it really comes down to how comfortable you feel with being close to home, far away from home, in state, out of state, what have you. And then compare your options again. Really good to keep good records, really important to keep good records. Again, use those free college search sites to really work out a comparison worksheet. Many of them have those worksheets for you. And it's really helpful whenever you're planning on applying because many institutions have a application fee, which a lot of those are coming back this year after last year. Many schools completely waived them. This year, it seems like some still are, but some aren't. So definitely those app fees can add up. I mean, if you apply for 10 places and their application fee is $50 a pop, that's $500 right there. So really make sure you are taking those into account. And if for some reason it places an undue burden on you financially, reach out to the admissions counselors, to the admissions departments at the institution, and see if they might be able to waive the fee for you. Many are very helpful at waiving that institutional cost. And again, we'll keep repeating this over and over. Keep that application and scholarship deadlines in mind. Sometimes they're two different deadlines. So some might have an application deadline, in December, but their scholarship deadline isn't until February. So it kind of is here and there because you need a couple of different things, like say the FAFSA or CSS profile, which we'll be going over a little bit later. And also make sure that you can apply into at least one school that you can get into, that you'll be comfortable attending. So the lingo around college admissions typically is that you'll want, one or two reaches. So schools that you're like, I may not be exactly what they're looking for. Like say, for example, if you have like just plain examples, not absolutely everything. This isn't cut and dried, but say like if I were to have a 3.8 GPA in high school and like a 25 ACT, a reach for me would definitely be, the Ivy Leagues. I might not fit their exact profiles like Harvard, Yale, those kinds of places. So it might be a reach. So I might apply to one to try it out, see if I get in. Targets are schools that kind of match. So say if you check on their website and they say their average GPA is, a 3.8 and you have a 3.8, perfect. That's a place that you would pretty likely to get in. There's a chance that you might not, but they're pretty likely. And then safety is an institution that you're going to get in. So you go, you are above their 50% mark for their average GPA or test scores. So you have a few different options when it comes to those. So make sure to apply at least one safety, just so that you're not at the end of the year realizing you didn't get in anywhere. So it's always good to have at least one of those. All right, admissions requirements. I'll check the questions. Looks like no questions thus far. So admissions requirements are really important because they're typically a little different depending on the institution. So some applications are a little bit more long, they're more involved. So definitely give yourself some more time to fill some of those out. Like say, for example, the common application, which has I believe it's 250 to 650 word essay, which we'll go over again a little bit later. Um, you kind of need a little bit of time to come up with that essay. You don't want to wait till the last minute. While some other institutions, like say, for example, UAA, we have a very simple and straightforward no essay application, which you can fill out in 15, 20 minutes. It's a pretty quick one. So just make sure you're keeping tabs on that. And then be aware of any supplemental requirements. I always say, especially for selective institutions, if they say that there's an optional essay, it's not really optional. You'll likely want to fill those out just to make sure that you're showing, that you're dedicated, that you're very interested in institution, and that you really are willing to go above and beyond for some of those more selective institutions. And again, different colleges have different requirements. So different GPA, they might have GPA requirement or GPA estimate of about what GPA they'll get into, ACT, SAT, all these can be found on their website. So again, check those out. Many, especially more select institutions, do take into account course rigor. So if you are taking AP, IB, honors, or whatever the most challenging course rigor is available at your high school, they'll take that into account as well. So for example, you can't just get like a 4.0 taking 0 rigorous courses and expect to be, the number one student in someone's applicant class. You actually do have to take some challenging courses to really help yourself stand out. Extracurriculars are also taken into account. So if you have interests, hobbies, make sure you put those onto your application if they have space to allow that. Or say if you have a job, that's really important to let them know that, hey, I've had these responsibilities, so that they know that you're a well-rounded applicant overall. Essays. So here again, when we go into the Common App, Coalition App, all those things, it's a little bit different depending on what essay it is, because some essays can be very specific to the one institution. Essays like the Common App essay or Coalition application essay, you do not make those specific to one institution because you're applying to many different institutions with that same application. But if they have one that is very specific to their own applications, like say, for example, University of Washington typically has something that's very specific um, to their application or to their institution, certainly make it all about them and why you're so interested in them. But it doesn't always have to be that way. There's also some other lingo that's really important to know, things like wait lists, because typically it's not a simple you apply and you're accepted or you're denied. Some students at selective institutions get waitlisted, and all that means is that you weren't accepted right away, but they're seeing how other students they'd offered admission to, will they accept their offer or will they decline their offer? And that might open up additional spots from the waitlist for you to be accepted. This sounds a little bit weird, but when you're actually offered a position on the wait list, you can decline that if you're like no longer interested. But I definitely recommend, typically, if you're not already committing to another institution, accepting it, just because there's no commitment. You can tell them no later. You can accept their offer later if they do offer you admittance to their programs. So it's really good to, again, have those backup options. And yeah, be very aware of things, especially if they have a non-refundable deposit, like many institutions do, to secure your spot. And then also admissions counselors. Every single institution has at least some, and they're really a great resource for you if you have questions about their programs, questions about it, getting admitted to their programs. Some schools even have interviews that you have to do with an admissions counselor or with an alum, depending on the college. So it's really great to be asking them questions. It's their job to answer your questions. So don't feel like you're being a bother or anything like that. They are there to help you. All right, application types. So there are 3 main types of applications. There's institution specific, the common application and coalition application. So I'll go into first institution specific. So these are typically unique applications that are for only one school, or maybe sometimes a few schools. Like say, for example, UAA, UAF, and UAS here in Alaska, we share our application. So while you do have to click a different button to apply to each different one, they are very much almost identical between the three, but the application only works for our institutions. There's plenty of those out there, I will say. Some that are getting to be a lot more common as a common application, as the name suggests. Over 900 schools share that common application. So they'll share typically the first half. So up until like the essay and the recommendations, all that stuff is shared. But then afterwards, they might have some supplemental questions or supplemental essays. It really depends on the institution. Then finally, the coalition application. It's very similar to the common application, though only about 150 schools use it. But I always love mentioning it whenever I'm talking about preparing for college because the University of Washington, which again, many students from Alaska go down there, they use it exclusively. So you'll really want to make sure that you're somewhat familiar with that. And the coalition app is also wonderful because it has a lot of free resources for students to help you throughout the application process. So again, common application, over 900 schools use it. All institutions, again, share that first section. So those identifying questions, so things like your name, where you went to school, all that kind of stuff is just shared. But then there's typically one essay. It's 250 to 650 words. I definitely recommend trying to be on the higher end of that, between 500 and 650. You don't want it to be too short. There's 7 prompts, including a create your own prompt. Most students will say choose one of the 6 non-create your own prompts. That's fine. That's normal. Don't feel like you have to be super creative and make up your own. But certainly if you are feeling particularly inspired, go for it. It's really just up to you. Talk with your college advisor though first before you do that. Again, may have supplemental sections for specific colleges, so might be additional essays, typically like those short essay questions, additional questions that they might just have. Price may vary, I will mention. Some are free, which is great. Some can be between $20 to $60. The highest I've seen $75. So you'll definitely want to, especially if, again, if that starts adding up, talk to either a high school counselor, reach out to the admissions counselor at the institution, see if you can get an application fee waiver, and they may be able to waive that fee. Coalition application, again, over 100 of these schools use it. Free resources, so definitely, even if you're not going to end up applying through a coalition app, it's great just look it up and see some of the resources that they have. Again, all institutions have that shared first section. Most schools include one essay question, but not everyone does. It's about 500 to 650 words. Again, this is a little bit narrower word count, so you have to be within that range. 5 prompts, including create your own prompt. One nice thing between this one and Common App as well is that if you like the prompt of the Coalition app or one of the prompts from there, instead of the prompt from Common App, you could just use that as a create your own prompt, and just kind of have your prompt be that way. Again, supplemental sections for specific colleges, additional essays, additional questions, prices may vary, but Coalition app institutions tend to be very good about waiving that fee whenever needed. And I actually see a question, so let me see. For the essay, can you write a story about how you want to be something? Yeah, so like you can make it all about your future goals. You can make it all about who you want to be, I hate to put air quotes, when you grow up, but when you graduate. I think that's a really great, sometimes inspiring way to write about your future. I just make sure that you're telling them a little bit about your motivations, because they want to see what's motivating, what's driving you to go to their institution, as opposed to it just being like, I just want to go there because I like the color or something. Maybe, you're trying to go to UAA because you love green and gold. I've seen some students decide it for, I wouldn't call it that dumb a reason, but I will say also some students for reasons like that have decided a college. I would say you might want a little bit of a better reason, but yeah, make sure you put that in your essays. There's a few different ways to apply. So I'll kind of go with each of them because we have, again, the Common App, Common App, Coalition App, or the institutional app, but then there's different ways in which you can actually send those in. So there's something known as early decision 1 and 2. These are a binding commitment to attend an institution if admitted. So before submitting an application early decision, you want to be sure that you are, pretty dead set on attending this institution. There is one exit clause, which essentially is if their financial aid package that they offer you is not sufficient and it's not affordable for you, you can pull back your commitment and say, no, I can't attend. Usually it's seen in selective institutions. I will mention for the seniors out there, ED1, it's to be typically these are called ED and EA, early decision and early action. ED1, the deadline was November 1st, so that you've likely already passed for many of your institutions, but many have early decision 2 deadline is typically December 15th, though I have seen some move it to January 1st. So you still have time if you'd like to apply early decision. One of the big benefits of applying for early decision as well is that typically you have a higher acceptance rate for early decision applicants. Like I've seen some schools where, their overall admissions rates might be about 35-40%, but their early decision acceptance rate is closer to 60 or 70%, because the school sees that commitment and they want to reciprocate that commitment by saying, we'll take a chance on you because you're committing to come here if you are admitted. And you can only apply to one institution early decision. Early action is not binding. You just get your decision a little bit earlier. So some more selective institutions like say California Institute of Technology, so Caltech, MIT, those kinds of places are using early action. There's not really a functional difference between early action 1 and 2. It's just the timing is a little bit different. You can apply to as many early action schools that you'd like to, but there is one restriction to that, and that is on the next page, restrictive early action. So it's same as early action, that you can only apply to one early action school if they have this option. So very selective schools like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford currently use restrictive early action for their applications, so that you're not just applying to everyone early action and getting those slightly higher acceptance rates. Because like early decision, typically there's this one's a more slight bump in acceptance rates. So restrictive early action, typically you'll see a 3 to 5% higher acceptance rates than the regular decision applications. I do see 2 questions. And then, does UAA have early decision? We do not actually. So UAA, we will go into in just a second because we're in the rolling or open admissions category. So I will mark these both answered because I'm about to answer them. So regular decision is where you just apply in the regular decision deadline. So typically these are going to be a little bit later. So typically around January 15th, though some, especially I know some places like University of Washington have been moving their deadlines far, far up. So you may want to get on those a little bit earlier to apply a regular decision. Then there's also rolling or open admissions. So UAA operates under this one, where you can apply it just about any time and you'll receive your admissions decision within about 1 or 2 weeks of applying. So they're typically making a decision on like preliminary information. So like say, for example, you might send a in-progress transcript, or you might send those in-progress grades that you have currently, your test scores a little bit ahead of time. UAA doesn't require test scores, but again, we're going over all institutions, not just UAA. So yeah, those tend to be a bit more common, especially in like the less selective institutions that you might see, selectivity, or like those are getting admitted. About 70 to 80% of their students who apply are being admitted. And then cost and affordability. And then let me check the questions one more time. And again, as you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature. I noticed a few people joined us a little bit late, but the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen is very helpful. A few different things about cost and affordability. So undergraduate tuition, charges may be assessed a little bit differently depending on the institution. Some just charge you a flat rate. You don't have to worry about how many classes you're taking until you get to a certain number. Like say if you're taking above typically 19 is the big cutoff for them. More than 19 credits, they will charge you like an overload fee. Depends very much on the institution, so it's very institution specific. And then typically something else you want to take into account is that lower division courses, so the closest course that you start in, tend to be a little bit less expensive than the upper division courses, the classes that you end with. So you can definitely expect a slight increase in how much you're paying over your 4 years. And then finally, tuition rate can be dependent on residency. So if you're a resident, say like in-state, so say Alaska students all get in-state tuition here, non-resident. So if you're going to another institution at a different state, or something known as Western Undergraduate Exchange. So many of the schools in the western part of the US, so places like Hawaii, California, Washington, Oregon, all those places, you get discounted tuition. You're not paying the full resident tuition or non-resident tuition, which tends to be like $20,000 to $25,000 a year. You might only be paying closer to $12,000 to $13,000 a year, which is a little bit more manageable. Student fees, you'll notice fees pop up just about everywhere. So those are paid by the students, but typically you're getting something out of it. So typically you might get like say free tutoring, or you might get free access to the games like basketball games, those sorts of things. Course fees, typically if you're having to do some kind of lab, there'll be a little bit of fee to pay for the materials for it. Parking fees, if you're bringing a car to campus, nearly every place has some kind of parking fee. Typically, they're between $50 to $200, depending on the institution. And then finally, late payment fees. Try to avoid those. Try to pay your bill on time because they tack on additional fees if you don't pay it on time, which really sucks. Housing, meals, and transportation. So typically, there's a separate housing application with a separate fee. So I know, for example, at UAA, if you're planning on living on campus, it's a $300 deposit, but you do get it back so long as you don't trash your residence hall or something like that. But it really, again, depends on the institution, so you'll want to check that out. On-campus housing rates depend a lot on the college and the room type, but most of the time between the living on campus and the meal plan, you'll be around $10,000 a year. So somewhat affordable typically, because that's comparable to living off campus, what you might be paying. And then typically there's some kind of meal plan. Most institutions are requiring that if you live on campus, though some don't always do that. And then finally, some other unaccounted for costs, so travel costs, so going to there, especially if you're going out of state, you have to fly there. Those kinds of costs are very important. Or if you have to retake courses, so try to make sure you're doing your very best so you're not having to retake any courses. Comparing costs, here's just UAA's tuition, for example, for resident tuition, it's only about $7,000 between tuition and fees, while for a non-resident who does not qualify for Western Undergraduate Exchange, it'd be $21,000. So see, many institutions outside of the state have very similar costs, especially those public institutions. So it's worth taking into account and seeing how much non-resident tuition or WUI tuition might be. And then again, that room and board, just about $12,000, so a little bit above 10,000, a little bit above that average. Books and supplies is typically just an estimate as well. Don't expect to pay this much unless you're buying every single book brand new every semester. Try to rent some books or go to like places like Chegg, that's CHEGG, or Amazon now has great ways to rent books. You just return those books and typically just about $10 to $15 a pop for each book. And then our final slide, I believe, is about affordability, and that's financial aid. So there's a few different things that you have to fill out. One, they have to fill out for every institution. So that's known as the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You can find that at fafsa.ed.gov or at studentaid.gov, and they will be able to help you both qualify for things like state grants. There's things like the federal Pell Grant that is dependent on your income or your family's income, but it can help cut down on costs quite a bit if you're able to secure those funds. And remember, grants is money that you do not have to pay back. So it's really nice to get those because it's literally free money. Obviously, at some point in your past or in your future, you've paid taxes for it. Take advantage of what you can get for free. Scholarships, again, many are available through the college from states, scholarship programs, um, or even other forms of aid like federal grants. There are federal direct loans or even private loans. You may use those. I don't always super recommend using it, but it can be a way if you're not able to secure funds other ways to help pay for your degree, or even things like federal work study. So you're working for the institution to pay for some of your tuition. And then college, oh, we had a few, yeah, I think we have like 2 more slides actually that we added. And I see there's a question, so I'll answer that pretty quickly. Do we have some home foods from where we are? I will say some places have kind of a rotating amount types of food for their students. So it's not always the same. I know, for example, UAA tries to have like say like Hispanic foods or Chinese food every now and then to kind of give give our students a sense of home if they're from other locations, but it depends on the institution. Yep, just remember, stay the course, continue to focus on academic success, because for many of you, this is your almost last semester. So make sure that you're maintaining, an extracurricular presence, you're staying involved in sports, clubs, other volunteer opportunities. Update that resume and even submit that along with your application. Begin, if you're a senior, collecting letters of recommendations from teachers, counselors, coaches, supervisors at work, anyone that you can get to, because some applications do require that. And then be sure to begin that application process. Around now, it's a really great time to start. If you're a senior, if you're a junior, make note of even a little bit earlier. I would say get started in October, if at all possible. But then also be applying for financial aid if you're a senior. The FAFSA completed soon. It'll actually open back in October 1st. It opens on the exact same date every single year. But again, investigate different scholarship opportunities, application requirements. If the institutions you're interested require the ACT or SAT or other placement exams, register for those early, especially so you can maybe take them twice if you need to, or if you want to. And finally, whenever you are done and you're admitted, make sure that you're registering for a student orientation session to check those classes. And again, super important, check your email. Try to make one that's specific to those applications again, so that your personal inbox doesn't get flooded. But it's very important for university-related correspondence, and make sure you make it professional. Don't have some weird name on it. Like I know one that I recently ran into had their personal name on Gmail as, I believe it was the lion, the witch, and the audacity of this, and then the B word. While I giggled, that still doesn't look very professional for them. So make sure that you're using like your actual professional name. Like I would just use Fernando Piñate Chavez for my name. I wouldn't use some random thing that I just think is funny. And then the absolute final slide, additional resources. You can check out our admissions page at ua.alaska.edu/admissions, the University of Alaska Career Coach, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what your interests are. College Navigator is a great way to look at different colleges. And then finally, US Department of Education studentaid.gov. Again, that is how you apply for financial aid. And I do see there's one question as we get to the last minute of our things. Do we get points for joining sports? I will say some institutions do take that into account in their application. So there might be some places that you can get in basically by being a fantastic athlete. So certainly if you are an athlete, good for you, and continue on it. And with that, I will pass it back on to our facilitator, who will be closing us out in this last minute.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Fernando, by the way. You gave a lot of amazing information. And I know in a short period of time, I'm sure we could talk tons and tons about preparing for college, but thank you so much. I do just want to remind everybody, once you are exiting out of this window, a quick 5-question survey will appear. Sign up for more sessions as well. There might be more college presentations happening. I know we do have some other panels going on this evening. And remember, a recording will be available at strivescan.com/Alaska. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Bye, everybody.